Have you ever wanted a podcast that did it all? Sports, politics, world events. Well, you have come to the right place, because you are listening to C&C Talks.
Hello, I'm Colin,
And I'm Charlie.
and welcome to the C&C Talks podcast, Season 2, Episode 13.
Just a reminder, as we do every week, we release every Wednesday, and we talk about politics, world events, and sports. It's currently Monday, April 17th, 2023, at about 6 p.m. Pacific Time.
And it is good to be back after a week off. Due to that week off, we have a very loaded show this week. We're going to be talking about what happened in Tennessee, Clarence Thomas, abortion pill ruling, the NBA playoffs, and a whole lot more. But we're actually going to start, Charlie, with a preview of the 2024 election because there's a lot of interesting signs heading up to that election. And we'll start with the presidential race, which is obviously the biggest race. And let's start, Charlie, by talking about Ron DeSantis, a potential candidate for the presidency. He is not officially announced, but he's made some decisions in the last couple of weeks that really seem to be potentially political suicide for him if he plans to run nationally.
Yeah, he certainly has. He really mismanaged, especially a couple of things with Trump, as well as a new bill to build a prison right next to Disney, which was really frowned upon, considering more people visit Disney World than live in the state of Florida. So, yeah, really bad moves from him, and this could really jeopardize a possible campaign in 2024.
Yeah, and you really also have to wonder, is he even planning on running for the Oval Office at this point in 2024? Because it feels like it might be Trump's nomination to lose in the Republican Party, and DeSantis, you said some really poor decisions. So he might not even run, which would be kind of shocking in a lot of ways.
Well, then for the Democrats, they have Biden, and then really no one else.
No, and Biden, of course, hasn't officially announced his run. Some other candidates that are running for president that likely won't even win. On the Democratic side, you've got Marianne Williamson, who obviously has no chance. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announcing that he's going to be running. Unlikely that he'll do better than 0.5%. Joe Exotic running for president, unclear what party he's running for. Obviously, that should not be taken seriously at all. Nikki Haley obviously announcing that she's running for president on the Republican side, and then Tim Scott just announcing in the last week that he's forming an exploratory committee to run, which is a sign that he is going to run, especially since he's been doing a lot of events, Charlie, in Iowa and New Hampshire, the first two primary states on the Republican side.
Yeah, and also up for in 2024 is the Senate, which will be crucial considering the Democrats currently hold that chamber by one seat and have a very difficult 2024 map. Can we get a little bit more about exactly what they would have to do to hold their current Senate majority, Colin?
Yeah, so I want to do this in the form of addressing a lot of Democrats out there because there's a big question going on the Democratic side right now. Okay, given the Senate map in 2024, given just how difficult it is for Democrats, right? They have to defend the states of Montana, Montana, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada. And their best pickup attempts are Texas, which is Ted Cruz's seat, Florida, and maybe Missouri, though that's a long shot. Although in some ways you could consider Florida and Texas to be a long shot. But so the question a lot of Democratic voters have been wondering is, what's the best place to put your money if you're a Democratic voter? If you want to donate to a Senate campaign, because obviously the earlier you donate to a campaign, the better it is. Well, let me tell you where you do not want to donate, because there's a good debate to be had about where you should. Where you don't want to donate is California, right? Adam Schiff, one of the Democratic candidates there for Senate, and we'll get into that Senate race a little later as well, because it's kind of wild. Adam Schiff in the first quarter raised $6.5 million. He has $24.5 million of cash on hand. That's not a competitive seat. It's only competitive in the primary. And I would bet that just about every Democratic voter would prefer to not have their preferred Democrat win that race than to have the Republicans retake the Senate. But I mentioned a really tough map. Michigan, though, Charlie, does seem to be like a state that Democrats are starting to shore up. The Michigan GOP just in absolute shambles right now. That the state party has about $2,000 of $2,000 on hand, and in the Senate race there, Alyssa Slotkin, the likely Democratic candidate, has raised $3 million in quarter one. The Republican candidate, the only Republican that's announced so far, raised $33,000. So not a good look for that party.
And something that I think is going to help the Democrats in terms of political things in this country are the next two things we're going to talk about, that being mass shootings and abortion.
Yeah, mass shootings and abortion, definitely. But real quick, before we move on from elections, George Santos, Charlie, has announced that he is going to be running for re-election in what can only be described as Republicans' worst nightmare.
Yeah, you don't really want him running, do you?
No, not a great look on your ticket. You cannot imagine that he is popular in his district.
Popular in his party or even popular in the nation.
Democrats would love nothing more than for George Santos to be the nominee, the Republican nominee for that district, because it would be an easy flip. They only need 5 flips in the House, Charlie, to retake that chamber, and that would be a really big deal if they could retake the House in 2024.
It would be. So let's move on to those mass shootings. We had several in the 2 weeks we missed, including one in Louisville and continuing from the one in Nashville a few weeks ago, as well as one at a birthday party in Alabama,
as well as so many others you can't even keep count. It's absurd, and unfortunately, Charlie, this is nothing new, of course.
As we've talked about many times before, it is just a question of what needs to be done to finally get something done on gun legislation, and the answer again is it's just going to keep happening and keep happening because both parties can't agree on what to do.
Yes, and there are a lot of people out there right now. The NRA just held their annual convention. There are a lot of people out there who are putting guns ahead of people. And frankly, it makes me sick. We've discussed this so many times on this podcast. Nothing has changed. Nothing's changed. Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. And I mean, what is it going to take? It seems like the answer is there's nothing that it could take.
Yep, it is a disaster. And another disaster for the Republicans is a new abortion pill ruling, which is yet another disaster for them. It's good for them in the short term because it agrees with them politically and ideologically, but it will really limit the people who will vote for them, considering that they lose more and more of the women who were considering voting for them, considering now their rights are being restricted. Can we get a little bit more about that, Colin?
Yeah, so obviously the Supreme Court overturned nationwide abortion rights. However, the FDA has this abortion pill that's been approved, and that basically means that anyone in the country can use it. A Republican district court judge overturning that right, that's now playing out through the courts, potentially getting up to the Supreme Court, where it's been temporarily overturned until there can be further hearings at higher levels of the court. But really, another sign that women's rights are under attack in this country at the moment. Yes, like you said, though, Charlie, probably not good for the Republican Party politically.
No, and another thing that shoots him in the foot again, being Clarence Thomas, what a disaster he's been with yet another scandal. Can we get a little bit more on what that was?
Yeah, it seems to be scandal after scandal after scandal for Clarence Thomas, doesn't it? Bunch of scandals regarding potentially taking bribes. Reporting coming out that he has accepted um, generous gifts. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in the form of vacations or real estate deals from Harlan Crow, a Republican billionaire. That's potentially a bribe, as Harlan Crow potentially had business before the court. Harlan Crow also, by the way, Charlie, is a Nazi, and I feel fairly safe calling him a Nazi because he has a bunch of portraits of Hitler and other Nazi memorabilia, and that's not something that you would really own if you did not support uh, Nazis. So, not a
I
good look
can't
on Clarence
imagine.
Thomas. Yeah, not a great look on Clarence Thomas, but it's not clear that anyone can really do anything about it. There's not a clear um, way to deal with justices like this, except obviously impeachment, but that's not going to happen. It seems like he right now has an unchecked power. There's no reason really for him to resign.
No, and in the stupid thing that happened in Tennessee this week, Tennessee attempted to kick out two legislatures who were supporting anti-gun legislation. Those two representatives were later reinstated.
Well, actually, Charlie, they tried to kick out three, but they were unsuccessful in kicking out the white one because, racism.
Racism and
And
Tennessee go pretty well together.
they do. And like you said, the two that were kicked out, Justin Jones and Justin Pearson, they were later reinstated. A fairly fascist move, and the Tennessee House Speaker now, Colin Sexton, going through some things. It's been revealed that he's been having affairs with seemingly everyone, including the, I believe, deputy communications director for the governor, Bill Lee, in Tennessee. He also apparently does not live in his district, which is a crime.
This seems like a
So
weird thing
he's
that's continuing because we remember that was a thing that Herschel Walker had a problem with that, and it's happened again to the Republicans,
and
which
so did Dr. Oz.
isn't that interesting.
Yeah, seems to be a real problem that Republicans are going through. Wouldn't it be nice, Charlie, if politics could be mostly scandal-free?
Yeah, but I don't think that's very possible.
Although, I guess then we wouldn't really have anything to talk about on this podcast.
Keep the political chaos going.
Sure. Meanwhile, Dianne Feinstein, the I think 90-year-old now, really close to that year-old senator, actually maybe 89. She announced that she was going to be retiring in 2024, but she's missed some key votes since she's been hospitalized. She serves on the Judiciary Committee. She has been unable to vote on advancing judicial nominees of the Biden administration, which means that they cannot go through. So now some calls for Feinstein to resign, Charlie. Thoughts?
Yeah, I do think eventually age does become a problem in politics. I do think if she is unable to be at the places that she needs to be and receive the information that she needs to receive, then I do think it is time for her to step down.
Yeah, and I mean, not a knock on her career, obviously, a legendary career as a senator from California, but it does seem time for her, at least to me, to step down because she is not able to do her job right now, and in some interviews she seems to be having some serious memory problems. So probably best if she was to step down. So
And
also
she
Charlie,
is 89, by the way.
yeah, in some very good news for Democrats, in Wisconsin, there was a Supreme Court election, and the Liberal candidate won, which means that the Liberals now have control of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And
Yeah, that is very good news for them. Wisconsin has been a bit of a battleground recently, so it is interesting to see that the Democrats are now making a significant push in that state.
Yeah, and it'll be really helpful to them to end gerrymandering in the state. Wisconsin is arguably the most gerrymandered state in the country by Republicans right now.
We'll put a link to a map of that in our description if you want to go check that out for yourself. And we have some more news from the Fox News trial by Dominion Voting Systems over Fox claiming that Dominion voting systems had rigged the 2020 election, which was untrue. And jury selection, I believe, begins tomorrow in that trial, which was delayed very briefly due to what exactly, Colin?
Yeah, so Fox was attempting to settle that lawsuit for $1.6 billion. Dominion does not seem interested in settling. They're going to make this go to trial. And Fox really does not want this to go to trial, not just because of the money, but more so because they're going to get embarrassed. There's going to be a lot of information about them that comes out. It's going to be incredibly revealing. It's going to be a very public trial. I imagine, Charlie, that we will be talking about this a lot in the coming weeks.
I can't imagine that we wouldn't. And we also have some news. Speaking of Missouri, Missouri is now to defund its public libraries, which, big surprise there, trying to cut down on the education.
Yeah, first sign of a fascist movement, Charlie. They come after the education. That's all I'll say on that.
Now to world events, and we have some very sad news out of Sudan, which has collapsed into a near civil war as rivaling factions within the army are now battling it out in not only the capital Khartoum, but also across the country, in a country that has been ravaged by violence truly since independence. There's a couple of wars that ended with South Sudan's independence, and now the glimmer of a civilian administration is now going out as two generals fight for control.
Yeah, also in Russia, or in Ukraine as well. Ukraine now beginning their counteroffensive. They look ready after the troops coming back from training in Great Britain. We'll see where that one goes. I imagine that's another thing that we'll be hearing talking a lot about on this podcast in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think we will. Just a reminder, you're listening to the C&C Talks podcast. Thank you for listening. Let's move on to sports.
Yeah, and not a big sports section today, but let's start with talking about the NBA playoffs. At the time of taping this, really, we only have all of the game ones completed. Also, why we're not talking about the Stanley Cup playoffs this week because
Those start the day
a
of
couple
recording.
Games completed by the time we're taping this. But let's talk about these game ones, Charlie.
Yeah, and I think one of the best games that had one of the best results was the Warriors and Kings. We kept it very close all game, and the Warriors lost, so I get to laugh at Colin now.
Yeah, you do, and it's unfortunate, and hopefully the Warriors will come back in game 2.
My big concern for them is they took a lot of 3-pointers that they shouldn't have taken, and they missed a lot of them.
And they missed a lot of them. It was a very, very good game. Had everyone on the edge of their seats Saturday night. I think that this could be a really long series. I think we could potentially be talking Game 7 here, and we'll see how that goes.
How about the Lakers? They had a great game against Memphis.
Great game against Memphis. And now with Ja Morant potentially out for game 2, I gotta imagine that they're the favorites right now, Charlie, to win that series. Potentially another extremely disappointing season in Memphis. And the Lakers, how far could they go right now?
I think they're a dark horse. I think with the team they got talent. They have a couple of big stars. I could see them going pretty deep.
Assuming they get past Memphis, they get the winner of Warriors Kings in the second round. That is a easily winnable series for them.
It is. And looking at some of the other games, the T-Wolves getting obliterated was not a surprise.
Miami.
The Suns losing was, though.
Suns losing was, especially without Paul George. I got to imagine that the Suns are able to tough it out, win that series. We'll see. But not a great look for the Suns in game 1. I'm not going to overreact to it too much. also not going to overreact to Miami's win over Milwaukee. I think that I still probably got Milwaukee in 5 or 6.
Yeah, and considering the Heat also lost Tyler Hero in the process.
Yeah. What about that? What about that Knicks Cavs series? That the Knicks look like the real deal. Jalen Brunson especially looks like the real deal right now.
Yeah, they are looking good. I think the series is going to be close. I think this is another one that could go to 7, but I do think the Knicks are going to take it.
Yeah, especially if we consider that last year's NBA playoffs were not especially good. I think that we're in for a pretty good postseason this year.
I certainly hope so.
All right, now let's talk about the MLB. A couple weeks into the season, by the time this episode's come out, my latest power rankings will be out on Twitter. So make sure that you follow us, C&C Talks podcast, to see that. But what are some takeaways from you, Charlie, so far in the early goings of this season?
I'm not too concerned about Seattle's slow start. I think we'll be fine. I am concerned about Philadelphia's slow start. And another big surprise to me, Arizona has been playing some really good baseball.
Yeah, Arizona definitely moving up for me. They've looked good. Dodgers have not looked especially great so far, and that's
no one in that
something
division
that
has,
concerns
though.
me, seeing as their offseason was bad, frankly.
Yeah, it was not great. Looking at the standings, I think Tampa Bay had a great start, and I think they're going to cool off.
Yeah, I love what they've done so far. I still think that they're a fringe playoff team right now. Rangers,
some other
like the
teams
start
that I
they've
think
had.
are, a couple other teams that I think are hot starters that really aren't as good as their record shows. I think Minnesota's going to start falling off a little bit. I think Texas is going to completely fall off. And I would say someone
I like what they've done so far. I think that they're still a fringe playoff team. I think that maybe they're going to be competing with the Rays and maybe a second team from the AL Central, whoever doesn't win that division between the Twins and the Guardians, for that final playoff spot. Not especially impressed with the start from the White Sox. Definitely worried about them.
No, they have not performed really well. Somehow at 6-10, they're third in their division, considering the awful starts from Detroit and Kansas City.
Yep, and the A's have been the A's. The Angels have also been the Angels so far.
Houston's behind us in the standings.
Yeah.
Colorado's looked awful.
The Angels, though, they're a 500 team. Let's be honest, they're a 500 team.
They are. They have the two best players, and they're not going to get anything done.
Almost certainly true. Make sure that before we go, make sure that you do tune in next week, because we're going to be doing our mock drafts in the NFL, 1 through 10. Be talking about Stanley Cup playoffs, a whole lot more. So make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, because we have episodes coming out every single Tuesday. Every single Wednesday. Visit our website, cctalks.net, which is everything you need to know about the show. And call us with your questions, 360-389-2630. Again, 360-389-2630. And follow us on Twitter at C&C Talks Podcast. For our producer Morris, production designer Zach, and proof editor Drake, I'm Colin.
And I'm Charlie. See you next week.
Thanks for listening.